Welcome back to SSL TLS lecture series. This is episode 12 and I am Saravanan, learning along with you. In today's episode, we are going to first discuss what are the various problems that exist with symmetric key cryptography, and then we will quickly go through the history of public key cryptography. We do not cover all the things. We will just go through very brief history of public key cryptography. So before that, we will quickly see where are we right now in this series. Okay, so what is the job of the SSL? The job of the SSL is very simple: to collect the application data from the application layer and then provide whatever security thing that is needed and then hand over it to transport layer. Okay, for this we learned that we need to provide confidentiality by using encryption decryption. For that we can use stream cipher or block cipher. Then we saw in order to detect the tampering of messages we need what is called integrity, which we can provide using hashing functions such as MD5, SHA1, SHA2, SHA3, etc. Then we learned that confidentiality and integrity alone is not enough because the attacker can modify both. So we need what is called authenticity, which can be provided using the MAC algorithm. Okay, so in the last 11 episode we were focusing on confidentiality, integrity and authenticity. Let's say you have successfully solved all the problem. At the end of the day we are still doing the symmetric cipher, right? So in order to do the symmetric encryption, both Ellis as well as the Bob, they need a key. So this key being a symmetric key, we need a way to transfer the key to Bob. If Ellis wants to communicate with Bob, he needs a way to transfer to Bob. Let's say if two unknown people want to talk to each other using symmetric key cryptography, somehow they need to arrange the key in advance, right? Because they are already unknown people, so it's going to be a big problem. So one possible way is you meet the person and directly hand over the key, or you can arrange a courier, but the moment you trust a third party is a problem, right? What if the courier guy opened the envelope and see? So there are a lot of problems with symmetric key cryptography. So one of the big problem is we need large number of keys. For example, let's say there are totally 5 people, right? Let's say there are total 5 number of people are there. So if all the 5 people want to encrypt their communication to each other, how many number of key you need? In mathematics we have a formula called n into n minus 1 by 2. So if you apply the formula, you will get total 10 number of keys, right? What if you are a big organization like insurance company or airlines, you have large number of employees. Let's say you have 5,000 people, right? So in that case your formula will tell 5,000 minus 1 is 4,999 divided by 2, right? So even if you assume this as 5,000, then it's roughly equivalent to 25 by 2, 12.5. You get 12 million, right? You need 12.5 million keys. So that's a really huge number of keys, and it's going to be a nightmare to exchange this key with all other parties. And also this solution is not scalable. The maintenance of the key is a nightmare, right? So this is one of the longest problem which every mathematician was trying to solve with symmetric key cryptography. There are really too many number of keys needed. The solution is not scalable. How we are going to maintain is another big problem. The key exchange is the biggest problem in symmetric key cryptography. If you want to exchange a key, how you are going to exchange it? If you want to encrypt that key, then you need another key to do that encryption, right? So it will become a catch-21 problem. So we need to figure out a way how to securely transfer this key in an insecure medium such as internet. So that's what we mean by key exchange problem in symmetric key cryptography. So one of the earliest example that we can see the kind of problem it created for symmetric key cryptography is during the World War II, the German was using what is called a German Enigma. The German Enigma is a electromechanical device used for encryption to send all the encrypted radio communication during the wartime. So this German Enigma machine was using a symmetric key cryptography. So what German did was, for 1 month, whatever key needed for 1 month, every day they were keep changing the keys. So every day whatever key is they need to configure for the machine. The machine comes with a rotor. So if you look at the machine, right, it typically has a rotor, lamp board, keyboard and plug board. It's not fully automatic. It's an electromechanical device. It also has some electrical wiring under each of the key, let's say if you press the letter A, right, after the encryption, whatever letter that the so-called ciphertext will glow on the lamp board. So you see which letter is glowing on the lamp board and you note down the letter. It also controlled by 3 rotors. So the idea is, even if the enemy captures this so-called Enigma machine, he cannot totally decode the message, because you need to know what are the rotor position, what are the different key used. So just smuggling the equipment alone is not enough to decode the messages. So what the German did was, they print the entire key needed for 1 month. They in advance they distribute the key to the very trusted people in the war zone. So for example, here I have given a German Air Force. It's called monthly key list number 649, which was captured during the World War II. So this is the original key sheet. So everything is written here in German language. Here is a rough translation of what is written here in the German language. So the English translation says it's a secret document. Every individual key setting is secret. It is forbidden to bring on aircraft, because aircraft is very prone to bombing, right? If the aircraft goes down, then the enemy can capture the key sheet. So it was banned. And in many zones, the key sheet itself was printed with a soluble ink, so that if you notice that enemy is going to capture us, you can pour some water on it so that the ink can dissolve by itself. So the order is, at any condition, the enemy should not capture this sheet. They need to totally destroy the sheet in advance if they see any threat from the enemy. So if you notice here, for every single day, day 1, day 2, day 3, all the way up to day 31, right? Every single day there is a row which tells what is the key rotor position, what is the corresponding keys that they need to use. So it was becoming a big nightmare for the German in order to distribute the key. They also have something called U-boat, which they used to sink the big ship. U-boat is a submarine which the German used in the World War II to sink big Allied forces ship. So they even need to distribute this key sheet, so-called Symmetric Cipher key sheet, to the U-boat commanders. Early, just before the war was started, one of the first country which formed a cipher bureau for military purpose is Poland, because Poland always has a threat from Russia and also threat from Germany. In the beginning, Poland was using the cipher bureau to intercept messages from Russia. Later, they changed the target to Germany, and then they started decoding whatever the German communication is. They formed a special bureau called Cipher Bureau, and they had some of the world's best cryptographers in Poland Cipher Bureau. I don't go into the details of it. If you really want to know all those details, you can read the book called The Code Breakers by David Kahn. Poland cryptographers started decoding the German messages, but at some point in time they realized that they were unable to decode. Then they noticed that German has changed the technique, and they start using the so-called Enigma electromechanical device, and it took lot of time and effort by the Poland cryptographer. They even stole some of the key sheet from the enemy, and then finally they were able to solve. So the Polish cryptographer, they start sharing about all their findings about the Enigma. They even reverse engineered the Enigma machine, but even with that they were unable to solve all the codes. To some extent they were able to solve. The Polish cryptographer built a semi-electromechanical device called Polish bomb. It's called bomb. It has a specific Polish name. I don't remember the name. It's called a Polish bomb. So they even share the design of the Polish bomb, the reverse engineered Enigma machine, to the British and French intelligence cryptographer. In fact, when the first time the British and French saw it, they were totally astonished, because they never thought a country like Poland would come up with such a beautiful design. So it was one of the first country which has a separate cipher bureau for military purpose. The story I am talking about is in 1920s, even before the war. British, during the wartime, during the World War II, they have their own cipher bureau called Government Code and Cipher School. Later it was renamed to GCHQ. The current day name is called GCHQ. So they set up a office just for code breaking purpose, roughly some 50 miles outside London. So the name of the place is called Bletchley Park. So throughout the war, from the first day to last day, throughout the war, all the code breaking was happening by British at this place called Bletchley Park. The current day building look like this. So this is the actual building in which the British code breaker work day and night 24/7 throughout the war. Their job is not only to intercept the German messages, but also 150 other countries, all the diplomatic mission messages they want to intercept and see what is going on. So I took the picture from Wikipedia. So like I mentioned, the Poland cryptographer shared their intelligence about the Enigma machine to the British cryptographer. They even shared their Polish bomb machine. So based on that machine and using some additional knowledge, one of the famous British cryptographer called Alan Turing, he created what is called a Turing Bomb. It is much more advanced than the original Polish design, and it is also a electromechanical device, and finally using the Turing Bomb they were able to crack the Enigma cipher. So the historian says this particular unit that worked at Bletchley Park in Britain, it helped to reduce the war time by at least 1 year because of the intelligence they gathered using cryptanalysis. But the problem is Germans were keep on changing the techniques and adding enhancement to the Enigma machine. So after some point of time, even Alan Turing was unable to decode, and then he realized that Germans stopped using Enigma and changed to very advanced machine called Lorenz SCZ40 series. So this Lorenz SCZ40 series was using a cipher called Lorenz Cipher, which is nothing but a Vernam cipher. Vernam cipher is nothing but a one-time stream cipher. It's similar to the RC4 cipher which came in later days, right? So it's a one-time cipher. If you have a, for example, if you have a 1 kilobyte message, you need 1 kilobyte of key stream. Of course, in those days there is no digital computer. I'm just giving an example. Okay. So this Lorenz cipher, no one was able to break. So partially they were trying to break it using the manual method by using paper and pencil, but they found it's taking extremely long hours to break even a single message. So even the Turing bomb was unable to handle the Lorenz cipher. So they were figuring out a way how to break this Lorenz cipher. So all this story related to the Lorenz cipher I just read from the code book by Simon Singh. It's a great book. If you have time, you might want to read this book. The book name is called The Code Book by Simon Singh. So this is how a Lorenz SCZ42 machine looks if you remove the cover. This machine is one of the model is kept at Bletchley Park Museum now. Like I mentioned, it's a rotor stream cipher machine used by the German army in particular. So for all the very important communication between Hitler and his generals, they were using this Lorenz cipher. It was developed by an engineer called C. Lawrence AG in Berlin. So in order to break the Lorenz cipher, one of the Bletchley mathematician from Bletchley Park, his name is called Max Neumann, he came up with a blueprint to handle the Lorenz cipher. Basically, his idea was heavily drawn from the Alan Turing concept of universal machine. Alan Turing earlier has a concept called universal machine. This is the day before computer was created. So he is considered one of the earliest guy who thought about a future computer. So he has a concept called universal machine. Based on the concept, Max Neumann came up with a blueprint of designing a automatic device. So he showed the blueprint to the Bletchley Park management, but the management felt that during the wartime they already don't have enough resources, and the design looks very complicated, involving 1500 electronic valves and other things. They thought it is too advanced and it's not possible at that point in time, so they rejected the plan. But luckily, Max Neumann was able to find a young engineer by name Tommy Flowers, who finally agreed to build this, and he spent 10 months. And finally built it. The British called it Colossus. The name of the machine is called Colossus. So it is considered as the earliest form of programmable computer. The Colossus is the precursor to the modern digital computer. It's a programmable device, and finally using the Colossus, British were able to break the Lorenz cipher. During the wartime, it is not that the Enigma or Lorenz cipher is faulty. It is because of the human mistake. Eventually the British were able to break the cipher. For example, when they were using Enigma, the army and navy was very strict, whereas the German Air Force Enigma operator were not following the rules that much. For example, in some cases they used the girlfriend name as the rotor setting, the starting letters of the girlfriend names as the rotor setting, repeating whatever previous configuration for the next day. So there were a lot of human errors did by the Enigma operators handling the Air Force, whereas the army and navy was very strict in handling the Enigma machine. So partly because of the human error, and also partly by the planned operation by the British to sunk some of the German ship and capture the code book and try to reverse engineer some of the things. So so what I am trying to tell is the symmetric cipher, because of the key exchange problem, you can even say German lost the war itself, right? So if they figure out a way for a very safe exchange of key, then most of the thing would not have happened. So I just gave the World War II as an example of how much important the key exchange is. It's extremely difficult, even though you use a one-time cipher like Vernam cipher, still because of the weakness, the way you handle the key, it finally British were able to break it, right? The other problem with symmetric key cryptography is it cannot provide what is called a non-repudiation. If you remember my earlier episode, I already told what is meant by non-repudiation. That is, if Ellis wants to send a message to Bob, after sending the message, Ellis won't be able to deny that she didn't send the message. That's what we mean by non-repudiation. In symmetric key cryptography, since both Ellis as well as Bob knows the key, it is impossible to achieve the property of non-repudiation because both the fellows know the key. It is always possible for the Bob to use his version of the key and create a fake message such that it was sent by Ellis. So it is not possible to provide non-repudiation using symmetric key cryptography. We need a way to provide this non-repudiation. Basically, we need a way to create what is called a digital signature. Okay. So these are the problems of symmetric cryptography. So mathematicians throughout the world always hunting for a solution to solve the key exchange problem as well as the so-called non-repudiation problem. That is the digital signature problem. Key exchange problem also include how to distribute the key, right? You need to a way. If you have large number of keys, you need a way to automatically distribute these keys. There was an undergraduate student at University of California, Berkeley by name Ralph Merkle. In the fall of 1974, he was still an undergraduate student. He registered for a computer security course called CS244. The course instructor was Lance Hoffman. And as a part of the course requirement, he need to do a term project. So the course instructor told you come up with a proposal for the term project. So Ralph Merkle was thinking about what to do for his term project, and he came up with a very, very novel idea which no one has ever done before. That is how to transport a key securely in a non-secure medium, such as internet, for example. Of course, during those days, the internet was still not there. So he was thinking about a way how to securely transmit a key in a non-secure medium. No one has ever done this before. So he came up with a proposal, with a 12-page proposal, completely typewritten, and handed it over to his course instructor Lance Hoffman. After going through the proposal, his teacher thought it's a crazy idea, no one has ever done such thing before, and he thought it might not be possible to do this, and he rejected the proposal. If you want to see the full history, right, I actually read the transcript of Ralph Merkle interview given at the Computer History Museum. It's available on Google. You can go and read the whole transcript. Whatever story I'm telling is basically from this interview. So this is the picture of Ralph Merkle. The picture credit goes to merkle.com, his own website. So he came up with the idea to solve the problem using a bunch of puzzles called Merkel puzzles. I don't go into the detail of how Merkel puzzle work, otherwise it will become a cryptography class. So I will just say he used some technique called Merkel puzzle to solve the problem. Okay. This core concept, in future it was called public key distribution system, the so-called transmission of secure key in a non-secure channel. Like I mentioned, his professor rejected the proposal. So what he did was he went back and totally revised his proposal in a very simple format. He again resubmitted. Again the professor went through his proposal and he again rejected. He found very disturbing. Eventually he withdrew from the course, but he was keep on thinking about the idea and he was working on this idea continuously during his part-time. One day he took his idea to another professor by name Bob Fabry at Berkeley, because he was doing undergraduate at Berkeley. So this professor, the moment he saw the idea, he found it very, very unique and he immediately was very surprised. He said, it's a really good idea. I think as far as I know, no one has ever done this before. So you please do not delay, immediately go and publish this paper. You write a paper and publish it immediately. In those days, since University of California, Berkeley is a very popular institution, most of the students and professors there, They typically publish in a journal called Communications of the ACM, Association of Computing Machinery. So Ralph, whatever idea he had in mind, he wrote in the form of a paper, and he submitted this paper in August 1975 to CACM. And the editor of the ACM, after going through the paper, and she got a consultation from a experienced cryptographer. Till this day, we don't know who is that cryptographer is. He straight away rejected the paper. The reason given is, he said, I am sorry to have to inform you that the paper is not in the mainstream of present cryptography thinking. I would not recommend that it be published. That is, no one has ever done similar thing right now. At least this fellow might have put some reference. Okay, this guy is working on this. I am trying this new idea which no one has done. But I can't see any reference done by anybody in the current day. Even the big geniuses have not touched any of this thing, what he is thinking. So I am not going to recommend this to public in a reputed journal like ACM. So it's a stupid thing, right? If you have a new idea, you should publish the new idea. But they, unfortunately, because he is just an undergraduate and his paper doesn't contain any big names, and eventually his paper was rejected. So Ralph became very, very angry. He still believed that there is a way to definitely implement his idea. If you want to see the whole history, right, I have given the URL in the bottom of the slide, merkle.com/1974. You can read the whole history of how he submitted the paper and what happened, all those things. There is a great genius by name P.B. Medawar. He once said that the human mind treats a new idea the same way the body treats a strange protein. If you inject a new protein in a human body, straight away all the cells will come and fight with the protein and kick the protein outside the body. It basically rejects it. This is the same way a human mind treats a new idea. If someone comes with a new idea, the first thing you will show is a resistance to that idea. That's what happened to Ralph Merkle. Even though his idea is very normal, no one was accepting his proposal. Temporarily, I will pause the discussion of Ralph Merkle. At the same time, in another part in America, there is another cryptographer by name Whitfield Diffie. He is a mathematics. He did his undergraduate in mathematics from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, in 1965. So after finishing his degree, he was doing a lot of programming projects and other projects in various university environment as well as in lab. The key exchange problem was always bothering his mind. He was always thinking to figure out a way to solve this problem, because he thought if he can break this problem, that is going to be a big revolution, because no one has ever done it before. So he was all the time obsessed with this key exchange problem. So this is the latest picture of Whitfield Diffie. The credit goes to Wikipedia. So in 1974, IBM Thomson J. Watson Lab, I think the lab is in New York. So they invited Diffie, because Diffie has a lot of ideas about key exchange. They want to hear what his ideas are. So they invited to give a lecture at IBM TJ Watson Lab, and Diffie gave the lecture, and most of the audience in the lecture thought, hey, what this guy is telling, he just say it may be possible, it can be doable. He is not telling anything concrete way. He just keep on giving a lot of theory that it might be possible, that might be possible. He is not giving a single concrete evidence that we can implement this. He is just suggesting various ideas. So not many people were impressed. However, there was one guy who was keenly listening on what Diffie is saying. So after the so-called lecture, this guy by name Alan Conheim, he is one of the IBM senior most cryptographic expert. He came to Diffie and said, hey Diffie, whatever idea you told about key exchange, a few months back, there was another guy who came to our lab and he spoke almost a similar concept. I think you might want to talk to him. Because a lot of the NSA projects were going on, the American National Security Agency projects were going on in the IBM as well. They don't want to disclose anything. He just give you a hint that there is some young person a few months back came here and who also talk about key exchange problem. Why don't you talk with him? Then Diffie got very interested. He thought, oh, is it? Who else in the universe is having the same idea like him? So he wanted to know. So then Alan Conheim said, that is none other than a very young professor called Martin Hellman from Electrical Engineering Department at Stanford University. This professor also recently completed his PhD and started doing the research. and he was very famous within the university also. So apparently he also gave a talk at IBM Watson Lab regarding the key exchange problem. So Diffie immediately wanted to meet him. So in those days it's not possible to immediately fly to wherever you want. So he took his car and started driving for 3000 miles to west coast of America to meet Hellman. So this is the latest picture of Martin Hellman. The credit goes to Wikipedia. So in September 1974, after driving for 3000 miles, finally Diffie reached to the place where Hellman was working. So he called Hellman. Hey Hellman, my name is called Diffie. I came all the way to meet you. I am interested to work with the key exchange problem. Someone from IBM Watson told me to meet you. Is it possible to have you an appointment with you? Hellman has never heard of the name called Diffie, so he thought, I don't even know who this guy is. Okay, look like he has some interesting thing to discuss with me. So he is not immediately ready to give the appointment because he has promised to his wife that for dinner he will come back to home to have dinner with his wife. So he reluctantly finally gave an appointment in the late afternoon for just 30 minutes. So Diffie finally came and met Hellman, and the moment they start talking to each other, immediately Hellman knew that this guy is a great guy and he has lot of ideas. It's better to work along with him. So they start talking, discussing. It became evening, and then he got reminded of his dinner plan with the wife. Then he said, Diffie, I have a dinner arrangement with my wife. Why don't you come to my home so that we can have dinner together and continue our discussion? So Diffie agreed. Further, he went to his home and keep on having dinner and keep on discussing until midnight. So only midnight they left. Then Hellman didn't want to leave Diffie. He wanted to immediately give him a job under one of his projects, and he also recommended, why don't you register for a PhD program in my place, that is in Stanford. So he agreed. Further, he registered for this graduate program, but graduate program comes with its own homework, assignment and all those things. Diffie thought it's too much for him, so he eventually withdrew from the graduate program. He was only focusing on the key exchange problem. So both Hellman and Diffie was keep on working about this problem, and they came up with some of the initial ideas. They don't want to delay further, so as soon as they came up with the initial ideas, they immediately wrote a paper called Multi-User Cryptographic Technique. I went through the whole paper. I don't have time to tell all the things in the paper. You can download this paper. It's on the Google. It's one of the revolutionary paper. There are actually two papers. This is the first paper they published. So it's multi-user cryptographic technique. It's not the practical thing. Whatever theory they had in mind, they first wrote in the form of paper. In December 17, 1975, it was finally published. Usually the publication process is very long process. It typically takes like 6 months or 7 months. So the general practice among authors is, as soon as they submit for the publication, immediately they start floating around what is called a preprint of the paper. So they took some of the preprint and started distributing it to some of the key people in the field. They also presented the concept in this paper in the National Computer Conference in 1976. All this story, whichever I am telling you, I read from this article called The First 10 Years of Public Key Cryptography, written by Diffie himself. It came as one of the IEEE article. So if you have time, I think it came in maybe sometime around 1988. I don't remember exactly. So if you want, you can look for this in Google. It's a IEEE article. It contains the whole history of the first 10 years of public key cryptography. So one of the preprint of that paper went to a graduate student at University of California, Berkeley. This fellow name is called Peter Blattman. And you know, right, our guy Ralph Merkle is also in the same university at Berkeley. So somehow the paper reached to Ralph Merkle also. So when Ralph Merkle read the paper, he thought, oh shit, this is the exact problem I am also trying to attack, but my idea is different. I am using what is called Merkel Puzzle. This Diffie and Hellman idea looks different. So maybe if I show my paper to Diffie-Hellman, they might be able to understand my paper. So that was the thought came to Raphael Merkel's mind. So he immediately sent a copy of the paper to both Diffie and Merkel. The moment Diffie and Hellman read his paper, immediately they thought that yes, it's really a unique idea. He is also attacking the same problem that we are attacking, although Ralph's idea is totally different from their ideas. So Hellman immediately knew that the Ralph idea is nothing but the public key distribution problem. He is trying to attack the public key distribution problem. So Hellman was suggesting to Ralph Merkle, why don't you come here for a summer or so, and you can work with me. We can work together to solve something. Parallelly, Diffie and Hellman continued their work because they already published a paper. They now want to advance further in the particular area which they proposed in the first paper. So in May 1976, finally some revelation came to Hellman, and he made a breakthrough discovery. So he thought if we use an exponential key exchange algorithm, he decided to use some exponential function in his key exchange algorithm, and he started working out in the paper, and finally he found out it's a workable solution. In fact, the very idea of using exponential, it didn't first occur to Hellman. Usually there is a culture in Stanford, if you are doing some research, quite often you meet your fellow colleagues to try to discuss various problems from other fields. The same way, Hellman also was regularly talking to other mathematicians in the department. So one of the professors there, I don't remember his name right now. I think it's John Gill or some name. I don't remember right now. So Hellman was discussing with one of these professors, and he is the one who suggested the exponential function has a special property. Then Hellman thought, why don't I use this property in my key exchange algorithm? And then he went back and started working out on the paper, and he found out it's totally workable solution. He immediately called Diffie and told, hey Diffie, I came up finally with this idea using an exponential function in the key exchange. You look at this. The moment Diffie saw, he immediately realized he exactly got the very same idea in his mind. It's just that he couldn't put them into the paper. The same idea crossed his mind as well. So immediately they both started writing it another paper. So this paper is called New Directions in Cryptography. This is the paper which introduced public key cryptography to the world for the first time. So it's a historic paper. You can find the copy of the paper in Google. I went through the paper. I don't have time to tell all the details in the paper. In summary, what this paper says is, this paper introduced a new key exchange algorithm called Diffie-Hellman key exchange algorithm. It also introduced the concept of digital signature in order to provide the property of non-repudiation. So this is the paper which introduced public key cryptography to the world for the first time. So immediately they published the paper in ACM in November 1976. The good thing they did was, in the paper they also mentioned about the Ralph Merkle work, that there is another guy called Ralph Merkle. He was also attacking the same problem, although he used a different technique. This fellow hasn't yet published the paper, even though he submitted the paper to ACM. So they tried to help Merkle, so they added this in their paper, that Ralph Merkle already submitted the paper to ACM. They didn't mention that the paper was rejected. They just put a note that the paper was already submitted to ACM. Even though they wrote this paper, Diffie and Hellman knew that this is not a completely practical public key crypto system yet. It's still at theoretical level. So in practice, if you want to implement, you still need some more. For example, if you want to realize the so-called non-repudiation property, so-called digital signature, you need a one-way function in mathematics. That is, from, let's say, if I give you the x, right? If given x, you can find y. But if I give y, you cannot reverse it. You cannot find x. In mathematics, we call it as a one-way function. Okay? That is, if I give you x, you should be able to figure out what is the value of y. But if I give you y, it is impossible to figure out what is the x value. So one way is possible, the other way is not possible. This way is possible, the reverse is not possible. In mathematics, we call this kind of function as trap function or one-way function. So in order to realize the public key cryptography, both Diffie-Hellman, in fact everyone else, always hunting for a very good one-way function to do this. So they were still unable to produce a practically workable public key crypto system. So the paper they published, the New Directions in Cryptography, it also reached the hands of another cryptographer called Ronald Rivest at MIT. Do you remember who is this guy? In the past episode I told you, right? There was one cryptographer, famous cryptographer called Ronald Rivest. He invented MD4, MD5, RC4, RC2, lot of other ciphers, right? Of course, all these things he invented later. But at that time, Ronald Rivest was just completed his PhD. After PhD, he is a very young researcher working at MIT as a faculty. So this Ronald Rivest has a natural gift. The natural gift he has is he is able to think lot of ideas and able to use the ideas in totally unrelated field. So he is very good in keep on generating the ideas. So he was By profession, he actually did the bachelor's degree in mathematics from Yale University. He also got a computer science degree from computer science PhD from Stanford University. Immediately after that, this story is happening right now in 1976. We are in 1976. So he is a very young researcher at MIT, always looking for a new idea. So the moment he read Diffie-Hellman paper, he knew that if someone implement this in practice, it's going to be a big revolution. So from that day, he keep on started thinking, is there a one-way function I can realize using which I can build a public key crypto system? So because he keep generating lot of ideas, he needed somebody's help. He needed more mathematician help to figure out whether whatever he is thinking is really workable or not. So he has a team of two other. This is the photo of Ronald Rivest. Of course, this is the latest photo. I don't have his old photo. The credit goes to Wikipedia for the photo. So Ron Rivest was not working alone. He also have two of his colleagues to help him. His colleague name is called Adi Shamir and Leonard Adleman. Adi Shamir himself is not an actual MIT guy. He was born in Tel Aviv in Israel, and he had a bachelor degree in maths from Tel Aviv University as well as a PhD in computer science from Weizmann Institute in Israel. Temporarily for 3 years from 77 to 80, he came to MIT to work along with Ronald Rivest. He is a very good mathematician. So every time Rivest come up with the idea, he will go through and analyze mathematically. He will shoot them down. Hey, this is the problem here. That is the problem here. So he keep on shooting them down one by one. He also had a help of another mathematician called Leonard Adleman. He is also a faculty at MIT. So before we go to his story, let's quickly see the picture of Adi Shamir. So this is again the latest photo of Adi Shamir. Credit goes to Wikipedia. I think right now, if I am not wrong, he is still working in Israel. So Leonard Adleman was a native Californian. He is actually grew up in San Francisco. He got his bachelor's degree in mathematics and PhD in both in computer science, both at University of California, Berkeley. He just completed his PhD and started working on this project along with Ron Rivest. He is one of the beautiful mathematician. Whatever thing you do, whichever way you confuse, he was able to clearly see where is the fault. So every time Ronald Rivest come up with his idea, he can uniquely figure out the fault in his algorithm, and he can tell Ronald, hey Ron, there is the problem in your algorithm, so this is not workable. Every few days they keep coming up with new idea, and Adleman was shooting them down. So in that way, all the three was equally participating in trying to figure out a one-way function by which they can build a public key crypto system. So this is the picture of Leonard Adleman. I don't have his old picture. This is the recent one from Wikipedia. Leonard Adleman not only famous for public key cryptography, he is also the guy who invented what is called DNA computing in biology. So he has a lot of other ideas touching different fields. So he is the father of DNA computing. So after the Diffie-Hellman paper in 1976, the Rivest team day and night they were working trying to figure out a one-way function using which they can build this so-called public key crypto system. So one day in April 1977, all the three was spent the Passover. Passover is a Jewish festival, like the Christian celebrate Christmas, right? So Jewish people will celebrate the Passover festival. So they wanted to celebrate this festival at the house of a student. So they went to the student house, they had a lot of wine, and after spending till midnight, finally all the three went back to their home. So Ronald Rivest could not sleep at his home. So he was keep on thinking about the idea of how to come up with a one-way function, Suddenly it occurred to him, why don't I use the concept of prime number to achieve my one-way function? Because in number theory, in classical number theory in mathematics, prime number factorization is the one of the very well-known problem. That is, if you have two prime number, very long prime number, if you multiply the prime number, it's easy to multiply them. For example, let's say if you have two prime number P and Q, right, it's very easy to multiply them and create the product. But given a product, it's very difficult to figure out what is the factors are. That is, one way is easy, the other way is not possible if you use a very long prime number. Suddenly it occurred to Ronald Rivest, why don't I make use of this as my one-way function? Let me make my prime number as long as possible, maybe 150 digits or 200 digits. In that case, it is possible. So this revelation came to him at middle night. Immediately he took a paper and started writing down all the things he thought. By the time the morning sunlight came, he was able to complete all the theory he wanted to have. Then he thought this time definitely is going to be possible. So next day morning, as the first thing, he gave it to Leonard Adleman. So the first thing he did next day was he called Adleman and told, hey, this time I have come up with this idea called prime number factorization. Can you please go through this? So as usual, Leonard Adleman went through the whole thing, but this time he could not find a single hole in the algorithm. Then he called Ron, looks like we did it this time. I can't figure out a single flaw in your algorithm. So let's also wait for Adi Samir. Let's see what he has to say. So the next day they also gave this to Adi Samir. Adi Samir also told, no, this time we don't have any flaw in our algorithm. Immediately we should write it as a paper. So Ronald Rivest spent some time and he wrote a paper. And because all the three equally contributed, he gave the name of the paper as the author title as Adleman, Rivest, Shamir in alphabetical order. So he gave it as ARS. But Adleman told that I am only a mathematician trying to find fault in your algorithm. The actual idea came from your mind, so there is no contribution of me in your paper. So he requested Ron Rivest to remove his name. But Ron Rivest said, no, I cannot remove it because all the three are equally contributed for this project. So your name must be there. So he refused to remove his name. Then after Adleman said, okay, give me a day, let me think about it, I will come back to you tomorrow. So the next day, Leonard finally agreed for it, but with one condition. He said, since you are the prime guy who came up with the idea, your name should be there first. You remove my name to the end of the thing. So from ARS, they removed the Adleman name to the end and they renamed it to Rivest, Shamir and Adleman as the author, and hence the RSA algorithm was born. So this is the story of how the RSA algorithm was born. So immediately they completed the paper, and the paper name is called A Method for Obtaining Digital Signature and Public Key Crypto System, and they published in, as usual, the communication of ACM. It took a long time to publish this. So finally in February 1978 they published this. So this is the first time the world saw a practically usable public key crypto system providing all the things needed. The RSA provide authentication, the RSA provide encryption, the RSA provide digital signature, the RSA provide key exchange. So everything they implemented practically. So it became overnight world famous and everyone was jumping with joy for inventing this so-called public key crypto system. So this is the paper which first introduced the character Ellis and Bob to the world. The couple Ellis and Bob first came in this paper. Thereafter, whoever wrote cryptography paper, everyone started using this character name called Ellis and Bob. And for their extraordinary contribution, all the trio, Rivest, Shamir and Adleman, all the three got the highest award in computer science called Turing Award. I think in one of the episode I told, right, Turing Award is equivalent to Nobel Prize in computer science. It was created in honor of the great British cryptographer and mathematician Alan Turing. Alan Turing is a father of theoretical computer science and artificial intelligence, right? He is the one who came up with the idea of Turing machine. He is the one who came up with the idea of universal machine. In fact, the current day digital computer is actually born because of his idea. So all the three, Rivest, Shamir and Adleman, got this Turing Award in the year 2002 for the extraordinary contribution of creating the so-called RSA algorithm. And now our man Ralph Merkel, finally, because now that Diffie-Hellman has put his name in their paper, he got a good reference, and finally after some revision the ACM agreed to publish his paper. So from the initial submission of 1975, almost after 3 years, finally in April 1978, Ralph Merkel paper was published, and actually the credit should go to Diffie-Hellman and Ralph for creating the public key cryptography. But unfortunately, because Diffie-Hellman paper was published earlier, the whole world starts celebrating Diffie and Hellman as inventor of public key cryptography. In fact, when they created the Diffie-Hellman key exchange algorithm, right, they filed a patent in US. If you look for the US patent, you Google for it. If you go to the patent, the inventor name is written in the patent as Diffie, Hellman and Ralph Merkel. All the three guys' names are there in the patent. But unfortunately, the whole world, most of the time, they only know Diffie and Hellman. In fact, in one of the interview with Hellman, right, I read a transcript of the Martin Hellman interview, which was given on 22nd November 2004 as a oral history number 375. The Charles Babbage Institute has a concept called recording the oral history by inviting the famous people in different fields. In one of the oral history interview, Martin Hellman suggested that no one should call it as Diffie-Hellman key exchange algorithm because Ralph Merkel also came up with the idea in 1974 itself, the concept of public key distribution system. So it should be really called as Diffie-Hellman Merkel key exchange. But unfortunately, the world doesn't follow it. We simply call it as Diffie-Hellman key exchange even to this day, right? This is an interesting oral history. I've gone through the whole history. If you have time, you may want to read this. The transcript is available. You can check in Google. Eventually, Diffie and Hellman also got the Turing Award in 2015 for inventing and promulgating both the public key cryptography and also its application called digital signature, that is the concept of providing non-repudiation. Wait, all is not over yet. Now only the story of public key cryptography is going to begin. So let's enter into the time machine and go back few years all the way to 1969. The unsung heroes of public key cryptography. In the year 1969, the British military asked the country's foremost spy agency, the GCHQ. They have a world famous cryptographer called James Ellis. They asked James Ellis, is it possible to figure out a way to securely transport a key in an insecure medium? Basically, they were trying to attack the key exchange problem. This part of the story I read from the code book by Simon Singh. So if you want the full detail, you can read from this book. So this is the latest photo of James Henry Ellis. I took it from the Telegraph UK magazine. So after spending 1 year, finally James Ellis secretly reported, because he is working for GCHQ, anything invented there is immediately classified as secret and put it in a file. The whole world doesn't know what they do. Everything they invent there is always a secret. So whatever report that James Ellis wrote, he basically wrote 2 reports. So this is the first report called CESG Research Report number 3006, in which he told that it is possible to securely transmit a key over a non-secure medium in a digital encryption. Okay, using a digital encryption. He also wrote another report a few months later in May 1970. He wrote a report how to do this with analog encryption as well. But this is just a theory. He just proposed a theory that it is possible to do this. However, at the moment I don't know how to do it. But theoretically it is possible. So he wrote an elaborate report both for digital encryption as well as for analog encryption. Later, I think after several years, sometime in one of the interviews, they asked James Ellis, I don't know how, much later, somebody asked him how you came up with this idea. At that time, James Ellis told that immediately after the World War II, James Ellis has a habit. He would read extensively. Any journal comes in front of him, he take a copy and start reading it. So he has this habit of reading everything. So once he encountered a journal from Bell Labs laboratory, some anonymous unknown engineer who wrote a small idea. Basically, how to securely communicate in a telephone line. This is the thing he read in the Bell Labs report. The report said, let's say Alice wants to securely talk to Bob. Alice will create a signal pattern of noise pattern, and she will inject this noise pattern in the line, and then she will call Bob. Hey Bob, now that I injected my noise pattern in the line, can you talk? Then the Bob will start talking because there is already a noise in the medium. Whatever Bob talks, it will mix with the noise and result will also become a noise. So nobody can hear this noise. Nobody can make anything out of this noise. After Bob finishes his speech, when she receives this signal, since she is the one who created this noise pattern, she will subtract this noise pattern from the receiver and he can recover the voice signal. So this is the idea came with some Bell Labs engineer who documented in some anonymous report. So James Ellis saw this report and immediately struck to him, what this guy told is nothing but a way of public key cryptography. So he thought with a similar method, it is possible to really realize public key crypto system, that is to transmit a key securely over a non-secure channel. So, and then he started writing this report number 3006 and 3007. Of course, at that time, the whole world doesn't know about this report. Both the report was immediately classified as secret, and it was secret for the next 27 years. So, James Ellis always looking for a way how to realize his concept, which he wrote in the report. Luckily, in 1973, a very young mathematician called Clifford Cox is a new recruit at GCHQ. He came for the work, and another engineer at GCHQ told him that, hey, we have a great cryptographer here called James Ellis. He came up with this concept. Since you are very new and trying to achieve something in life, can you see whether you are able to come up with a way to implement his idea? So he took up the James Ellis proof and he went to his home and he thinking, and he finally came up with the idea. As a very young recruit who wanted to achieve something in life, somehow without realizing the enormous job that he has in hand, he is able to come up with the idea. The idea he came up with, this is the photo of Clifford Cox. It's the latest photo. I don't have his old photo. The picture credit goes to Wikipedia. So he came up with the idea and he wrote a report to GCHQ. Immediately GCHQ put it as secret classification and put inside. The world doesn't know about the report. Later in future, whatever he invented was given a name called RSA asymmetric encryption. So RSA was invented by Cliff Cox few years before Rivest, Shamir and Adleman invented on their own. Okay. RSA, this asymmetric encryption is not the only part of public key encryption, right? Still, we need to provide a key exchange algorithm. So at that time, Clifford Cox doesn't know how to implement a key exchange algorithm. So he has one of his friend by name Malcolm J. Williamson. So in just 1 year from this guy in 1974, this cryptographer by name Malcolm Williamson, he developed a key exchange algorithm. And as usual, immediately it was classified as secret and put inside GCHQ. This so-called key exchange algorithm in the future gave a name to it called Diffie-Hellman key exchange. So even Diffie-Hellman key exchange was originally invented few years before by Malcolm Williamson at GCHQ. The GCHQ was keep on trying to make it as a practical public key encryption system, but they were unable to do it. They have a secret agreement with the US NSA, the National Security Agency. So because they couldn't do it, they passed these ideas to NSA. And then they asked NSA, hey guys, my fellows here has invented something called public key crypto system. Is it possible for you to realize in a practical way? So the NSA got so much excited upon hearing this idea because they themselves could not do it. So upon hearing the idea, they somehow tried to implement it. But at that time, all this are happening roughly around 1974, right? So at that time, they don't have enough computing power. And because of that, they were unable to realize a practical, workable public key crypto system. All this story, whatever I am telling you right now, right? I actually read from the Clifford Cox interview, which is recorded by JustDNet UK. So the whole interview transcript is available in the URL I have given here. You can go and read it for yourself. So unfortunately, both GCHQ as well as NSA, both of them were unable to realize the idea into a workable practical public key crypto system. Finally, from almost 23 years after that, the first time the idea came to James Ellis in 1970, right? So almost 27 years after that, in 1997, finally the British government declassified the so-called James Ellis secret report, the secret document. They declassified and gave permission to Clifford Cox to talk about it in a public meeting. So in a public meeting, for the first time, Clifford Cox revealed all this historic information, and they put those documents publicly on internet. Actually, I went through both the secret report written by the James Ellis. You can download it. You can go to Google and check for the report number that I typed, 3006 and 3007. You can read. So the kind of pain they went through, the whole Diffie-Hellman reinvented in front of their own eyes. They have to shut their mouth. They can't disclose anything. The whole RSA was reinvented in front of their eyes. They can't open their mouth. They have to shut their mouth. Of course, internally they were rewarded, but still the whole world was celebrating Diffie-Hellman and RSA, right? Even though they are the one who first did it. So that's the brief journey of the history of the public key cryptography. So I think we have come a long way in this episode. I have to stop here. In the next episode, we will look at the RSA and Diffie-Hellman key exchange algorithm. So in today's episode, in summary, what we learned is symmetric key cryptography has the problem of key distribution and key exchange. Also, it needs large number of key, which can create a maintenance nightmare, and it is not scalable. As an example, I told you the example in World War II, right? The German Enigma cipher, German Lorenz cipher, even though the cipher is very strong, because of the key management issue, eventually it was broken by the British using the Turing Bomb as well as the Max Newman Colossus machine, right? One thing I forgot to tell you, the Colossus machine, right? Immediately after the war, the British ordered to totally destroy everything happened with the Bletchley Park, all the Colossus machine, everything else. So they followed the order and completely destroyed all the Colossus machine. So they didn't left with a single machine. Later, after several years, finally, I think now they recreated the Colossus machine. You can find it in the, I think in the Bletchley Park Museum, if I am not wrong. So we saw about the problems of symmetric key cryptography, and then we saw how the public key cryptography was invented all the way from the work of the Ralph Merkel using the Merkel Puzzle, and then the work of Whitfield Diffie, Diffie-Hellman, and then the work of Rivest, Shamir and Adleman, and finally the unsung heroes James Ellis, Clifford Cox and Malcolm Williamson. I think with that we will end this episode. Thank you very much for joining today's episode. See you again in the next episode.